Paper is an important part of our everyday life. We use it for communicating, connecting, and having fun with each other. Before the invention of paper, in the ancient times, people communicated through pictures and symbols carved on clay tablets and painted on cave walls. But how is paper actually made? Who invented it? How do we turn wood into sheets of paper? In this video, we will see how the papermaking process began and how log turned into pulp and then finally into paper. Over the centuries, paper has been made from a variety of materials. Wood pulp, rice, water plants, cotton, even old clothes are some of the few. But no matter what, one thing you need for sure is fiber. The word paper is derived from the Egyptian papyrus. Paper made from papyrus was a chief writing material in ancient Egypt. The ancient Egyptians used the stem of papyrus plant to make sails, cloth, mats, cords, and above all paper. The ancient Egyptians followed a series of steps to turn papyrus into paper. First, the stems of the papyrus plant gets cut into long thin strips, which then is laid across each other. The stalks are then gently pressed or rolled and then soaked in water for at least a day. When the stalks are ready, they are taken from water, laid across one another at right angles, and pounded into strips. The layers are then pressed together and the gum, released by the breakdown of plant structure, acts as a glue which bonds the sheets together to create this writing material. About 2000 years ago, inventors in China took communication to the next level by crafting cloth sheet to record their drawings and writings, and soon enough paper was born. Pulp paper was first made in China using the inner bark of mulberry, hemp, and rags in water. This diluted mix was then mashed into pulp, liquid pressed, and the thin mat is hung in the sun to dry. Once the fibers dried, the paper was ready to use. This process produced long-lasting, high-quality paper. Today's paper fiber comes mainly from three sources: byproduct from the sawmilling process, pulp wood logs, and recycled paper products. In fact, much of the paper we use every day is a blend of new and recycled fiber. By the 8th century, the discovery of paper traveled to the Middle East, followed by papermaking in Europe, and finally in 1690 the first US paper mill was built in Pennsylvania. At first, American paper mills used a Chinese method of shredding old rags and clothes into individual fibers to make paper. The first recorded use of wood for papermaking in Europe was in 1769. But it was not until 1840 the paper made entirely from wood pulp appeared. The first newspaper to be made in all wood pulp was the New York Times, which appeared in 1870. The search for cheap, readily available, and easily renewable substitute began. The papermaking process was made faster and cheaper by the invention of Fournier papermaking machine. This machine was first used in England in 1803 and finally ended the slow process of papermaking by hand. Papermaking actually involves various processes to turn the wood log into everyday paper products. However, there are three key steps to the process of papermaking, namely pulping, papermaking, and finishing. To kickstart the pulping process, the logs are debarked. The bark has to be stripped from the log since it cannot be used in papermaking. The debarked logs are then chipped into small pieces before undergoing a process called chemical pulping. In this process, the small wood chips are added to an acid solution to separate the plant fibers, which are held together by lignin, which results in the pulp, which is a thicker, less refined version of paper. After being meshed, screened, and dried, the pulp can be used to make high-volume commodity printing products like the newsprint and magazine paper. But to be turned into paper, the pulp needs a little bit more work. Next is the papermaking process, which involves mixing the pulp with water. This mixture then is pumped into the large papermaking machine, which stresses the pulp mass through a wire mesh to remove excess water. Here, the fibers begin to spread out and take the form of a thin sheet. Next, this thin sheet of paper is dried above 100 degrees Celsius over a series of cast iron cylinders. But the journey for premium quality paper doesn't end there. In the last stage of finishing, a film of chemicals is applied to the surface of the dried paper to improve the properties of the paper before being wound into wide jumbo reels. The jumbo reels are later cut into smaller pieces and shipped worldwide to tailor customer needs. Even in the age of electronics, we use a lot of paper in the United States, about 70 million tons of paper and paperboard each year. According to the US Environmental Protection Agency, paper and paper products are recycled to a greater extent than any other waste products in the US, representing a 66% recycling rate. The environmental benefits of paper recycling are many. Recycling paper preserves trees and forests. Did you know every ton of recycled paper saves about 17 trees? Paper recycling also reduces greenhouse gas emissions, leading to improved air and water quality. Paper recycling also saves a lot of energy and water and saves considerable landfill space, leading to less solid waste. Paper is an indispensable part of everyday life. Beyond its use as the basic material for written and printed communication, paper in its various forms are used for hundreds of other purposes, including packaging, wrapping, insulating, and toweling. Many of us still prefer the feel of a book or a physical newspaper to swiping a screen. Although paper may be on the decline, but it will survive not only the supermarket shelf or beside the lavatory, but in the office too. All technologies have a habit of enduring. We still use the pencils and candles, and the world still produces more bicycles than cars. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more educational content.